There are many shows dedicated to Magic the Gathering strategies, decks, and formats. But unlike all of them, this channel is about discussing an individual card, an isolated card, an unrelated card. This is an Magic card. Hello and season's greetings, my illustrious internet strangers. My pretend name is Dusty Cupboards, and welcome to the luck-riddled 7th episode of An Magic Card, the highly polished turd of a YouTube channel where I exhaustively discuss a randomly selected Magic card. Before we get to that most tender morsel of an endeavor, I must first assess an assortment of the comments associated with the previous installment of this show. Max Lewin was going to be featured in the last video, but I had to remove his comment because he failed to send me a picture of his dog. But it turns out that was in fact not the case. When he posted a picture of his dog, YouTube simply flagged his post as being spam. He tried again on the last video, and although his comment was again removed, I did manage to get a picture of his pupper. That is a very cute dog. Maddie Potter refuted the idea that no ladies watch this show, implying that I could potentially have dozens of lady fans.
There are dozens of us. Dozens!
Joshua Black commented that like the goblin we talked about last week, he is a drill sergeant. That's pretty neato. Stephen Klein contributed a very well thought out review of Major Pain, which is great because now we don't have to rewatch it. Although reading his review kind of makes me want to rewatch it. Many people said yes with 10 exclamation points, which makes a lot of sense because I specifically requested that people comment yes with 10 exclamation points. I was legitimately somewhat confused though why so many people were leaving triplicate comments, and then I remembered that I also specifically requested that people leave 3 comments. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, go ahead and leave a comment. Leave 3 comments. Which explains why people were doing that thing I told them exactly to do. AJ Fine asked me about the intro music, which is a song I slapped together in about 5 minutes. If I can figure out how to do so in a simple manner, I'll put a link to it in the description. In addition to the regular intro song, I also created a more ambient version of the song to be used as background music throughout the videos. But every time I try and use it, it seems to just make things too complicated. Also, it makes me incredibly sleepy. But I'll play some of it for you now. Having totally nailed that segment, let's bobsled on over to the primary topic, one of the most festive cards in the history of Magic the Gathering. I'm going to try and talk less while looking at Gatherer here. I feel like last time around I just talked forever while looking at Gatherer and it wasn't interesting or entertaining at all. I am going to stick with Gatherer though. Somebody suggested that maybe I should switch over to Scryfall, and Scryfall is fantastic. I definitely appreciate that website. I use it for almost everything. But at the same time, I feel like if I stay with Gatherer, it will increase the chance that Wizards of the Coast will just send me a bag full of money. Anyways, let's go. I'm really hoping this is going to be a blue card to round out the color pie. So I don't know. Either way, we'll see what happens. That seems like a blue card to me. There's a bunch of text on this card. I like when you see a card and it has so much text that you know that you're going to have to actually stop thinking and read it. But I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that even a little bit. This costs 6 mana, has something about spines. This artwork is pretty wild. Definitely an old card. I'm not even gonna look at these words. It's an instant also. It's an instant and a blue card. Boom, look at that. Going places in the world. Looking forward to that bag of money. I hope I don't have to talk about Crovax more though. It's funny, Spinal Embrace, and it looks like he's embracing the spine. And the spine has spines. Is that why spines are called spines? Because they have spines on them? I guess we'll find out. Spinal Embrace is a rare 6-mana instant from Invasion. This card is both blue and black, a color combination which is most frequently referred to as Dimir, because of the Dimir Guild on Ravnica, who embody those colors. The Dimir Guild is somewhat exceptional among the 10 two-color guilds that dominate Ravnican society, because at times their fixation on secrecy and espionage has caused the guild's very existence to be kept hidden from public knowledge. It would seem like their existence could simply be deduced by the presence of the other 9 color pairs as guilds, but I guess that's a cognitive leap that the majority of Ravnikans weren't willing to make. Prior to visiting Ravnica, the color pairs didn't really have commonly used nicknames, but I distinctly remember the term bruise being applied to blue and black when I was a kid, in much the same way that red and green was called Christmas. I wrote this script on Christmas. Merry Christmas. Spinal Embrace checks 2 boxes on our bingo sheet, being both a blue card and an instant, which is kind of unfortunate because now it's probably going to be a really long time before we get to cross anything else off the bingo card. I'll talk more about the bingo card in a few minutes. Invasion was the first set in Invasion Block, which we talked about previously when we visited Krovak's Manor in episode number 4. This means we already know that Invasion was a big duck, and we also already know that it was codenamed Beijing. Our intellect expands with each passing episode, and to be honest, we're getting so smart, it's kind of scary. This large helping of Peking duck was delivered on October 2nd, 2000, which is exactly 3 years prior to the release of Mirrodin, which we discussed previously in the nose trumpet-filled 5th installment of this ill-conceived YouTube TV show. The fact that we already discussed October 2nd in a previous episode means that you already know that this day is the birthday of a famous, bespectacled pacifist, and you already know that October 2nd is marked in that individual's home nation as one of only 3 national holidays they celebrate. Is there anything you don't know? Your neck must be super strong to hold up that giant brain of yours. If you're disappointed that we've already discussed October 2nd and want another piece of calendric trivia, then how about the fact that the set Invasion released exactly 2 years to the day before the beginning of the DC sniper attacks, which lasted 3 weeks and involved the random murder of 10 innocent people. Still want more trivia? I didn't think so. The set Invasion is about the invasion of Dominaria, our collective Magic the Gathering hometown, on which most early expansions were set. Who is invading and why? It's pretty simple really. Long ago there was an ancient precursor civilization called the Thran, and their civilization was powered by power stones, which were really great in every single way, except that they caused a horrible disease called Luckily, there was a kind and brilliant doctor who was able to figure out a cure for this disease, and his name was Yawgmoth. He had been exiled for a little bit due to a petty political disagreement, but was welcomed back to help treat the sick. He did such a great job healing people that he was lauded as a hero, and everybody loved him. He got the girl of his dreams, quelled the rebellion, was elected to city council, and a visiting planeswalker named Daifed even opened up a portal to another plane that he could use as his personal laboratory. Things were going really well for this altruistic and noble doctor, but then people found out about the minor war crimes he had committed during his time in exile, and also his slight obsession with eugenics, and also the fact that he was intentionally making people sick, and the fact that he stabbed Daifed in the brain with a knife made out of power stones in order to dissect them and learn how planeswalking worked. And so after a little bit of drama, all of Thran's civilization collapsed and Yawgmoth retreated to his laboratory plane called Phyrexia, where he became an incorporeal godlike being who twisted the bodies and minds of his followers into unimaginable horrors, who lived bleak and brutal existences in a hellish nightmare world of tortured flesh and an endless mechanical progression towards some unobtainable and ill-defined notion of synthetic perfection. So obviously, despite his excellent medical career, he's a bit of a polarizing figure. So when he decides to come back to Dominaria along with all of his friends, who look like the Venn diagram overlap between meat grinders and ground meat, it's understandable that the residents of Dominaria are a bit dismayed. Luckily for the residents of Dominaria, they have a morally unambiguous hero in Urza, a brilliant artificer who specialized in crafting power armor and plot armor, who is also really into eugenics, and who was also personally responsible for allowing Yawgmoth and his Phyrexian minions to return. Huzzah! The invasion set symbol comes into play here, as this pointy Techno-Magi rune mark is both iconic and deeply convoluted. You might recognize it from cards like Coalition Relic, or Coalition Flag, or Ardent Soldier, or Orim's Touch, where the cleric Orim is face painting the symbol onto an incredibly ugly man. Or on the censored Chinese version of Urborg Skeleton, because China doesn't like skeletons. Kengi went out and had the symbol made into a necklace, because he balls hard. And this Metathran on Prohibit has it tattooed on his arm. The Metathran were a race of slender blue humanoids with Bride of Frankenstein hair, who were genetically engineered by Urza, but genetically engineered in like a good guy way, not a bad guy way. The Coalition symbol just shows up a whole ton throughout Invasion Block, and I can't tell if trying to find them all is fun or tedious. What's neat about the overall symbol though is that it is composed of 5 color-specific symbols, which can be seen really clearly on this cycle of cards from Planeshift, except for on the black one where it kind of just appears to be an afterthought. Since Invasion Block was so focused on multicolored cards, including cards with off-color activations, these sub-symbols were often used to demonstrate a creature's allegiance to a specific color combination, especially when it comes to emissaries, battle mages, images. And everybody's favorite tribe, the Volvers. Wizards of the Coast, please print more Volvers. I'm not going to take the time to specifically mention which symbols are featured in the artwork for which cards, but I assume that the version of me which exists in the future will do an excellent job of putting up a full shirts basket worth of card images with red circles and lots of complicated interconnected lines that demonstrate which illustrations feature which portions of the greater coalition symbol, which is seen in the middle right portion of every wonderful game rectangle from the set Invasion. Part of me wants to applaud Wizards of the Coast for being so intentional with how these symbols are sprinkled throughout the sets and Invasion block to signify color correlations, but it seems a bit inconsistent. Like, I'm pretty sure Viridian Emissary doesn't have the red symbol anywhere in the artwork. I've looked at it quite a lot and I don't know, is it supposed to be on this little scroll maybe? And at times the iconography feels a bit stapled on, like with Pincer Spider. I see that the spider has the coalition symbol emblazoned upon its glowing egg sac, which I guess is a cool way to show your dedication to the cause. But as a spider with big pinchers, who lives in some kind of murky den, how do you even accomplish recreating such a flat graphic symbol in such a clean manner? As somebody who has a lot of experience looking at symbols, I would like to make it clear though, that the coalition symbol is a good symbol. The 276 of the 350 cards in Invasion to bear this symbol is Spinal Embrace, following the incredibly bizarre Smoldering Tar, but preceding the very handsome Stalking Assassin. As mentioned several weeks ago, Invasion block is where Wizards of the Coast started to get a good handle on making multicolor cards, and Spinal Embrace is a pretty good example of this. Its function is a combination of both black and blue abilities. When casting Spinal Embrace, you gain control of a creature, something that the mesmerizing color blue is very well known for. That creature is then killed at the end of the turn, something black is all about. In this way, Spinal Embrace is both a theft spell and a kill spell. Reading the words on the card with your eyes, you might have noticed that there is more going on. The whole point of instant spells is that you may play them instantaneously. This card has a very strict timing restriction though. You can only play it during combat. Combat is one of the 5 phases in any turn of Magic the Gathering, assuming you aren't forced to skip a phase. Combat itself has 6 sub-phases and is therefore the most complicated phase, but being restricted to combat reduces the opportunities for you to cast Spinal Embrace in a given turn by 80%. A sorcery can be cast in either your pre-combat or your post-combat main phase, meaning that a sorcery can be cast in 40% of your turn phases. Since both players have a combat step though, in a given turn cycle you can cast Spinal Embrace in 2 out of 10 of the phases, the same as any other sorcery speed spell. This combat clause is rare in Magic, but is shared by Cauldron Dance, another 6 mana instant from Invasion, as well as a short list of other cards I shall now name. Angelic Favor, Disharmony, False Orders, Illusionist's Gambit, Mandate of Peace, Super Smash Bros. Melee, Mirror Match, Savage Beating, Surprise Deployment, which is from Planeshift and has some truly fantastic artwork, and Winter's Chill, which is a member of Ice Cauldron's Tiny Text Club. False Orders is the original of these effects, having been printed in the original Magic set Alpha, but a lot of other inclusions are from Commander products, which might be hinting at a conclusion we reach later in the video. The interesting thing about all of these cards is that they function very differently depending on whose turn it is. If you cast Spinal Embrace on your turn, during combat, as specified, and more specifically at the beginning of combat, you can take control of one of your opponent's monsters. It would be great if you could attack with that creature, but when you gain control of a creature, it has summoning sickness, even if it was already on the battlefield. But wait, let's pull out our imaginary rhetorical device magnifying glass and further inspect the text which everybody watching this video has already completely comprehended. It says right here that the monster in question gains haste, thus allowing it to attack for you. Also, since Spinal Embrace untaps that creature, it doesn't even matter if it had attacked you on your opponent's previous turn, or if they had some way of tapping it in response to the spell. Now you're prepared to hoist your opponent with their own petard. To add insult to injury, you then eat that bad boy and gain an amount of life points equal to its toughness. Toughness is often seen as the bulkiness of a creature, so you're devouring the mechanical equivalent to a rack full of Flintstones ribs. It's Talara's Bane all over again. A well-timed snatch and bash might be enough to win some games, and the end result of you hitting your opponent with a 6/6 creature and gaining 6 life is a 12-point life swing. Not bad. What's even more not bad is when you cast Spinal Embrace Embrace on your opponent's turn. Let's say you're facing down two hefty chonkers who are being declared as attackers during your opponent's appropriately named Declare Attackers step. Hopefully they didn't find it suspicious that you passed your turn with 3 generic mana, 2 blue mana, and 1 black mana open, because if not, they've fallen right into your trap. By casting Spinal Embrace before the Declare Blocker step during combat, you can take one of your opponent's chonkers, untap it, and then block their other chonker. By choosing the heftier of the two, you can guarantee to eat their remaining attacker, and then at the end of turn, you get to literally eat their other creature and revitalize your precious life points through the restorative property of prehistoric fast food. This is what is commonly known as a 2-for-1 in Magic the Gathering, because you used one card, Spinal Embrace, to destroy 2 of your opponent's cards. This isn't even a magical Christmas land scenario. This is the card performing as intended. For those who don't know, Magical Christmas Land is a term used by Magic players to describe an incredibly unlikely situation, which is imagined specifically to make a card seem better than it is. A good percentage of my videos take place squarely in Magical Christmas Land. If you want to hear about Magical Christmas Land, then imagine that after you steal your opponent's big butt attacker and big butt block their second best attacker, you cast Cloud Form to flicker that creature you stole and return it to play under your control. Sure, you will miss the life gain, but now that creature is yours forever. Or perhaps you have a Brass Squire, and you can tap it to attach an assault suit to the creature you just stole to prevent it from being sacrificed. Then at the beginning of your opponent's turn, they will regain control of the creature, but not be able to attack you or a planeswalker you control. Unfortunately for you, they still have enough creatures to attack you. But your opponent once again failed to notice that you passed your turn with exactly 3 generic mana, 2 blue mana, and 1 black mana up. Now that's Magical Christmas Land. Merry Christmas. 6 mana is pretty high for an instant spell though. Being somewhat responsive, many instants are cheaper to allow for more flexibility. 6 is kind of the ceiling, with only 27 instants ever printed that cost more than 6 mana, not including split cards, which are mechanically considered to have the casting cost of both sides combined. Of those 27 instant cards that cost more than 6 mana, most of them also have a cost reducing effect, with 2 of them having Affinity, 1 having Convoke, 1 having Undaunted, 2 having Delve. Wait, that's not true, just 1 of them has Delve. 1 of them having Delve, and 6 having alternate casting methods. There's a good reason why this is the case too, as passing your turn with 6 mana up is pretty bad if your opponent simply doesn't attack you and you have no reason to cast Spinal Embrace. For that mana, you could have cast Princess Lucrezia, which is actually the first card to ever cost 3 generic mana, 2 blue mana, and 1 black mana, and which you could steal with Spinal Embrace and then tap to add a single blue mana, if you wanted to. If you're playing IPA Draft, which sounds 1000% like a beer, but is instead the Invasion, Planeshift, Apocalypse draft format, you're often going to want to be in 3 or more colors. And splashing cards, especially more expensive cards, is pretty easy. Blue and black are both strong colors in that format, and while I don't think Spinal Embrace is necessarily a slam dunk first pick, it's the sort of big effect which could end a board stall and win some games all on its own. Expensive situational spells aren't what most constructed formats are about, and it would be rare to see Spinal Embrace showing up in a more competitive format, but big mana plays and using your opponent's own cards against them are what EDH is all about. EDH and Limited are the formats I play the most, and for each of these videos I've done featuring somewhat lackluster cards, I've expected to see them show up in decent numbers on EDH Rec, if nowhere else. Spinal Embrace has 2 reprints, one of them in the 2013 Commander pre-constructed deck, and one just this year in the Zendikar Rising pre-constructed Commander deck. Despite these inclusions, and despite fitting nicely into the popular black and blue theft theme around which many Commander decks are built, it only appears in 412 decks on the statistic tracking site EDH Rec. This is still a new record for this channel though, but not as many as you would probably expect. I think that in reality there are probably quite a lot of people playing Spinal Embrace in their pre-constructed decks, and those simply aren't being reflected in the numbers here. Having these 2 reprints gives us a nice sequence of card frames though, with the old nostalgic Tiger Stripe frame, the modern frame, and the current card frame which features the holographic sticker and a striking black border extension along the bottom of the card. Spinal Embrace is fortunate to feature the artwork of Donato Giancola, who has contributed paintings for 141 cards, and has some real fan favorites among his catalog. It's legitimately likely that at least one person watching this video has Cartographer as their favorite Magic card illustration of all time, and it's worthy of that kind of admiration. Memory Jar is a classic card, and its swirling pink and purple Art Deco mist is as memorable as the jar itself. I'm personally quite partial to the pastel palette on Crystal Chimes, but throughout his contributions he is more recognizable for his great aptitude in depicting polished chrome, like these silly equipment we discussed in episode number 5, or this creepy alien we discussed in episode number 3. His flair for hands should also be noted, and I would argue that he rises rivals Vulcan Baga for the title of Magic Handmaster. I would also be remiss if I didn't point out that he illustrated the original Coalition relic, which bears the symbol we talked about so much earlier, Cauldron Dance, which has already been featured in this video, and the card Flamewave, which is famous for containing a hidden skull alongside a dude riding a wave of lava on a surfboard. Donato Giancola is a very prolific artist, and he continues to contribute work to Magic the Gathering today. His work outside of Magic is often related to Middle-earth, or scenes which fuse science fiction imagery with classical motifs of marble and high drama. Hajime Sorayama would be very happy to know that within Donato's expansive portfolio are at least a few examples of very sexy chrome robots. I really love the way Giancola uses geometry and framing to give his pieces an almost religious tone. The subdued hues and limited color palettes that he seems to prefer help lend an air of dignity to his pieces. His paintings are quiet and timeless. I do not have a strong preference when it comes to artistic mediums, but the lustrous quality in Giancola's work has the distinct look of oil paint, with layers of tone being built up to create gorgeous opalescent skin tones and warm glowing sunlight. And while I am glad that some artists can excel with acrylic or digital painting, for Giancola, I'm glad that it is oil he has chosen. I'm especially fond of his work involving space, which retains a surreal, fantastical feel, despite featuring anachronistically contemporary space technology. The combination of applied, technical equipment and romantic depiction helps to remind us all of the wonder that is human achievement. If you're a fan of mythology, or Middle-earth, or Game of Thrones, then his website has a wealth of great pieces for you to see. His website also does a great job of describing his technique in detail, from sketches to references to drawings to color studies and painting. It's rare to get this much insight into how an artist works, and you can watch videos of him producing work, including shooting reference photos, putting down washes, expertly flicking his brush to create a star field, carefully highlighting each of 1,000 links of chainmail, and clutching his maul stick while he explains the many joys he gets from his work. He seems like a genuinely kind-hearted person who has received an enormity of praise throughout his career. When asked what his most cherished moment was, though, he didn't list his Hugo Award or his laundry list of professional recognition, but his first Magic card illustrations as the thing he remembered most fondly. Donato went from being a coat check at the Society of Illustrators to being a world-renowned fantasy artist, and we're lucky that after several decades, we still have him making pieces for the game we love. After you get done watching my moldy watermelon rind of a YouTube channel, go watch him paint and become overwhelmed with the urge to start oil painting. If you really want to try and emulate him, he even lists the exact supplies he uses on his website. Stylistically, he references Rembrandt and the Flemish masters, but I think the term aestheticism might also apply nicely to the delicate and somber tension found in his work. The painting he completed to accompany our most spinal of embraces is without a doubt not his best, as his paintings are capable of reaching sublime heights, and this one is merely good. It's also not featured on his website, which might reflect his personal opinion on it. The composition is pretty straightforward, depicting the struggle between our human character and the spine, which wishes to embrace him. The overhead perspective would seem odd for most artists, and its effectiveness here is a bit dubious, as it prevents us from seeing the expression on the character's face. But overhead shots are something that Donato is clearly fond of. The pattern on the floor stands out strongly, and while it doesn't obscure the central action, it does certainly distract from it. The figure resembles the artist enough that it wouldn't be presumptuous to think that Donato posed for this piece himself. The spine which the character embraces fits with the mechanical horrors of Dr. Yawgmoth, and this piece certainly conveys the sense that an alien force is trying to take control of you. It's somewhat funny that the character is embracing the spine in addition to being embraced by it, which obfuscates the card name's meaning and casts doubt upon who is controlling who. But the repulsion we feel when looking at the writhing mechanical spine makes it pretty apparent that the human is the victim here. All vertebrate creatures have spines, from rats to snakes to dinosaurs and noggles. Snakes hardly have anything else. This inside of your body thinking noodle houses your spinal cord, which is like a telephone line that allows your huge brain to tell the rest of your body what kind of embarrassing stuff to do. Spill an entire carton of milk on your friend Andrew in kindergarten? Sure. Why not, brain? When spines come up in Magic the Gathering, they often relate to Phyrexians for some reason. Spinal Graft shows a very similar looking robot spine being very methodically inserted by Volrath, the one-time Evankar of Wrath, who Krovax replaced. Remember Krovax? Spineless Thug is ironically a creature who fought for the Evankar of Wrath, but maybe its robot spine implantation procedure simply didn't work out, or their insurance was rejected. Spine of Ishsa is another spine card, which was printed in Mirrodin Besieged, the set in which Mirrodin was besieged. Surgical Extraction is probably the most famous spine-related Magic card, and it shows a somewhat normal-looking spine being telepathically removed from a robot-looking person on the Phyrexian-occupied plane of Mirrodin. Lastly, Spinal Parasite shows a weird bug, which probably doesn't have anything to do with Phyrexians, because it was released in 5th Dawn, a set which took place on the shiny chrome world of Mirrodin prior to the Phyrexian invasion there. But I love Spinal Parasite. This card is ridiculous. It has negative stats. That's just super weird. The term spine has another connotation in Magic though, and it's a recent one. In the newer online Magic client, Arena, there is a shorthand term used called backbone, which refers to a number of cards that allow creatures to deal damage with their toughness. This ability goes back to Doran the Siege Tower in the set of Lorwyn. I wasn't too fond of the term backbone originally, although I will admit it is better than the colloquial terms butt fighting or big butt. I thought something like resolute or steadfast would be better, but looking at Spinal Embrace, it's neat to see the connection between this spell, which associates a creature's spinal column with its toughness, and a nickname for a toughness-oriented ability, which came out almost 20 years later. It's also worth mentioning that since this is the last of these videos I shall ever be producing in this calendar year, that the name Spinal Embrace also sounds a bit like Final Embrace. As many of us look back upon this year, the tragedy, the outrage, the isolation, and the uncertainty, this finality is likely a welcome turn. And while the orbital period of our planet around the sun and the way we track the passing of the days doesn't have any real bearing on the state of our world, perhaps we shall still find comfort in the act of bidding this wretched year goodbye. There will always be Yawgmoths out there trying to rip out our guts and put in weird robot parts, but occasionally you manage to catch the world off guard with a really expensive combat trick, and everything comes up Millhouse. Win or lose though, an embrace is an embrace is an embrace. I hope you have people in your life who can help you get through these hard times, with support and understanding. But at the end of the day, know that there are always strangers on the internet who share your stupid interests. And if nobody else is there to give you a hug when you are down, you can always wrap your arms around a disembodied mechanical spine and rest easy knowing that it won't ever let go. Alright everybody, that's the end of episode number 7. I hope you enjoyed it. I've indicated in some of my previous episodes that I wasn't sure how long I would be able to maintain my weekly production schedule, and I think I might take the first week of 2021 off, and long term I might want to move to a bi-weekly schedule. Some generous folks have asked me about supporting this channel. One guy even offered to send me a pair of those super hard to find Jace Beleren sneakers. All I had to do was send him a bunch of pictures of my feet. I appreciate the notion that people would want to waste some of their hard-earned human bucks on my terrible YouTube channel, but the reality is that the limiting factor is simply time. I created a Patreon page, which was actually super fun, and I'm tempted to launch it simply because it would be a nice platform for individuals to place bets on which column of the bingo card will be completed first. But it feels weird asking people to give me money for something I'm doing for fun. I don't have anything against content creators who have Patreon pages or sponsors, but I make these videos for fun, and money has a way of sucking all of the fun out of things. I'll probably put up the Patreon eventually and make merch and stuff, but for the time being, just pick a charity in your area and send them whatever support you think my YouTube channel deserves. And I'll see you next year on And Magic Card.